economics with our most respected, highly experienced Madhusudan sir. Before going to start our class, let's begin with today's quote. You can make success sure by work, sacrifice, enthusiasm, unselfishness, and self control. You are the master of your own destiny. Take your personal command today itself. Yes, you can. Thank you. Now over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sania, for the brief introduction. And so, are you people all excited about today? If not about the economic class, you must be excited about the semi-final match. How many of there are cricket fans here? Yeah, Ayush is excited about the class. That's very good, Ayush. Felt good for me. Okay, so I thought that since it's a big day for India, let's do a recap. How many of you remember that in 2019 also in the last World Cup, we went to the semi-final and met the same opponent, New Zealand. And unfortunately, we lost that game. So what were the reasons? Those who are the cricket enthusiasts, please answer. What were the reasons why we lost that match? Not only particular match, what was wrong with India's campaign in that World Cup? Why we are not able to win that World Cup? Someone like Ayush is saying that Rohit hit 5 centuries. MSD run out management. Dhoni out. So people are saying that Dhoni out became a demise for the whole team. Practicing early wicket. Rather, there was a more systematic issue, in my opinion. The systematic issue was that throughout the World Cup, Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli were taking the charge. They were the one who were amassing runs in all the matches. The rest of the middle order was unexposed. Okay, and unfortunately in semi-final, maybe due to rain or good bowling by opposition, these two players did not perform. So the rest of the middle order was not exposed and they collapsed. Okay. If we relate the same thing to economics, in economics, there is something called Dutch disease. Have you heard of it? Or in general terms, it is also called as resource curse. Have you heard this? Today we will win 100%. Yes, I am also confident that we have changed something. But have you heard of these things, these terms, any of these? No. Okay, so let me tell you, this is a situation where a country has a lot of resources, and because of these resources, the country become less developed, or the company goes into economic crisis. So normally what should happen? If you have a lot of resources, you should become developed because of these resources. But resource curse says that the same resource become a curse for you. The same way as the same Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma performance became a curse for India, that the rest of the batting was not tested properly. So similarly, it was first identified in case of Netherlands, the same opponent which we have thrashed a few days ago. So in case of Netherlands, it was witnessed that there were few development, especially in petroleum and natural gas. So a lot of new discoveries were made. So there was a new resource at their disposal, and this led to economic boom in the short term. But later on, what happened? That first there was a lot of petroleum with you, so the petroleum export started happening. Because of this export, their currency became costly. These things we have yet not studied. We will see how export improves the currency. But as of now, you just simply accept the teacher that if export increases, your currency appreciates, which I am writing in layman terms as currency become costly. Okay, so if your currency become costly, then what happens that the other sectors of economy, they do not grow, they become uncompetitive. Or effectively what happened that the whole of Netherlands economy became dependent on one resource, that is petroleum. So rather than being dependent on a lot many other manufacturing sector, agriculture sector and service sector, their economy was now driven by petroleum only. And when petroleum prices crashed in the global market, their economy went into recession. So the abundance of petroleum became a major reason for the economic crisis in Netherlands. So because of this, the term came as dust disease, and the same phenomena has been witnessed in a lot many countries, especially South American countries and African countries. They are also very much resource rich, and because of the plenty of resources, these countries are not able to develop because invariably they become dependent on only that resource. Apart from that, in case of Africa, especially, there is one more factor which adds to this crisis. That is, when you have a lot of resources, what happens that a lot many other countries and investors come to your country looking for these natural resources, and what they do is they exploit your country. They exploit the resources, they exploit the nature, they take advantage from your geography, and your country does not develop in this process. So in case of Africa, this exploitation is also considered as one of the factors which is not allowing these countries to develop. Or even if we look further back into the history, the very fact that India was targeted by British is because India has a lot of resources at that point of time. India was considered as Sone ki chidiya. So that resource attracted the colonialism to India, and which in turn led to impoverishment of India. So first, this phenomena was noticed in 1970. Then various scholars related it to a lot of historical facts, and they witnessed that resource has been a curse for various countries in the past as well. In India also, you can see that there are a lot many states which are mineral rich, but they are one of the poorest state in the country. Can you take the name of few? Yes, Bihar. Bihar is no more resource rich. Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha. So these are the states which are having probably the best of resources and probably least of development. These are collectively, they were earlier called as Bimaru states. Okay. So this is something which we find in India. This is something which we have found in the past as well. And in cricket also, this is something which was present with India earlier also. When Sachin Tendulkar, probably the best batsman in the world, was in our team, we never won the World Cup. In 2011, we won the World Cup when the dependence on Sachin was very low. There were other cricketers on which the team was more dependent. Okay. So never ever, for learning for you is never ever get dependent on any one thing. Like there are a few students which say that I have very good polity economy and I neglect history. They do not make any such a strategy. At times it is going to take you down, because sometimes unfortunately what will happen that UPSC will give a lot of question on the areas which you have left. You might see that only few questions come from these areas. I will leave this area. So never leave any area in toto. Okay, so that's the learning from this resource curse. It might happen that you can use these things in essay as well, because this is something which can be related in various dimensions. So this is a concept that can be used in essays, in economics, and in your uh, common conversation as well. So now let's come back to the class. If you have any doubt regarding this phenomena, how Middle Eastern countries manage this? See, Middle Eastern countries did two things. One thing, they formed cartel. So they started manipulating the global prices. The second thing that they did, that a lot many countries, especially UAE, they diversified their economy. The solution is diversification. Like in case of Dubai or especially UAE, less than 5% of Dubai income is dependent on petroleum, etc. They have diversified their economy in various sectors. And now the same is being done by Saudi Arabia and Qatar as well. Okay. What was the reason for Qatar organizing World Cup? Their team is nowhere in the top team in football. But they organized the Football World Cup only to showcase to the world that they are also a destination that can be visited for tourism purposes. The countries like Iraq, they did not succeed. Although they have a lot of resources, they could not diversify. So they collapsed. Okay. So this phenomena is known as Dutch disease. That when you have a lot of resources, you get infected with the Dutch disease and it will lead to economic crisis. चलो, now let's come back to the previous class. हमने previous class में क्या क्या cover किया था? Just एक बार quick recap कर दो. Vandana is asking what is the significance of cricket team for a country. See, it brings about a lot of global image, good global image, and then with global image comes the global tourism. Like this can also be one of the probable question, or write down a question. You have already studied a lot of things, so you can answer this. In the next class, you should come up with some points. What are the economic impact of, the question is, what are the economic impact of G20 and Cricket World Cup in India? Or rather, right, organizing G20, sorry, hosting G20 and Cricket World Cup in India. So you do not have to look for the aspect of other aspect. I mean, host करने से क्या फायदा हुआ? This is the question. So do not write the general points about G20 here. The G20 will give this benefit. What's the benefit of hosting it in India? Those general benefit we would have got even if G20 was hosted in China. And same with the Cricket World Cup. What's the benefit of having a Cricket World Cup in India? Apart from the getting favorable pitches and favorable scheduling, economic benefit क्या है? ठीक है. So tourism is one important. बाकी सोचो और next class में हम लोग point discuss कर लेंगे. ठीक है. Now let's come back to the point that we were discussing. What we were discussing was agriculture growth in post-independence India after 1950, 1990. How agriculture started growing, and in this we saw that there was green revolution. What were the factors responsible for green revolution? Yes, we also studied land reform and the failure of land reform. High yielding variety seeds, insecticide, pesticides. Yes, so these were the factors which were responsible for the green revolution. Green revolution lead to food security in India. India became the largest producer of one of the largest producer of food grains. India from being a net importer of agriculture produce, India is currently a net exporter of agriculture produce. So these were the contribution of green revolution, then we saw towards the end there was certain criticism or certain side effect of green revolution as well. And in that we have seen one of the points was that there were more requirements of input, and with more inputs a small farmer were finding it very difficult to do the agriculture, and it increased the disparity between a small farmer and large farmer, because large farmer were doing using high yield variety, pesticide, insecticide, their productivity has increased, they had already had the large farms. Now the small farmers, they were continuing with the traditional practices, and in a way this was also harming the economy. In economy also, see, more than 80% of your farmers are a small and marginal farmer. So if these farms are not adopting the modern practices, overall production will remain low. If a lot many farm is using traditional practices, not using the modern practices, your overall economy's agriculture growth is retarded. So the idea came that we should subsidize these agriculture input. So from here, the idea of subsidy took birth. So now let's understand what subsidy is. So subsidy is simply, it's a financial assistance, okay, provided by the government. Who will provide? The government, to support certain industries, sectors, or individuals. Okay, I have written you a very general definition of subsidy, and it makes it very clear that subsidies are not only given to the agriculture sector. Even the industries get a lot of subsidy, and this is something that agriculture organizations keep on arguing, that when you give subsidy to industries, you do not make any hue and cry, and when the same subsidy is given to the poor farmers, then you start making hue and cry about the high subsidy bill. Okay. uh, See, industries, can you give some example of subsidy being given to industries? Satyajit, you are asking, I am asking to you. SEZ, sugar industry, yes, very right. Now, recently, one scheme, Akhil has said, production linked incentive scheme. Write the full form, production linked incentive scheme. This is very effective scheme that government is saying, especially in the production of electronics good. There was recently a debate also. Raghuram Rajan has said that this incentive is not doing any good to the country. Effectively, we are paying for the uh, industries to produce in India, where the government is saying that in India, the production of electronics items has increased. Okay, but this scheme is in a way subsidizing the industrial production. So this is also a kind of subsidy. Similarly, we also provide some export subsidy to certain merchandise item. Then there is SEZ units. In this SEZ, there are various uh, kind of incentives are given to the companies. Here, basically, import duty is zero. In SEZ, there is no import duty or export duty. So subsidy is not something that even government only gives you. Subsidy is every kind of financial assistance, and it can be sometimes government not taking tax from you is also a kind of subsidy. Sometimes government is giving you something, sometimes government is not taking what it was supposed to take. Both are a kind of financial assistance. That's why the word financial assistance is used in the definition. And then these days we are getting subsidy on electric vehicles, EVs. We have been getting recently subsidies on solar panels. So subsidy is something which is kind of pervasive in all sector of economy. However, in UPSC syllabus also they have specifically mentioned subsidies impact in agriculture sector. So we will keep our discussion limited to the subsidy in agriculture sector. But this is not something which is only limited to agriculture sector. Yes, subsidy on LPG cylinders, you are right. Earlier we used to get subsidy on petrol and diesel also. नहीं नहीं, Vishwakarma Yojana will not come under subsidy because subsidies are say if there is some financial assistance is provided to industries sectors like schemes wherever we those are the schemes we use a different terms called interest subvention. So since there is a specific term with the name interest subvention which is being given in the Vishwakarma scheme, we usually do not club it with subsidy. However, by definition, you may say that that is also in the nature of some kind of subsidy. Yes, in Delhi, subsidy on electricity is being given, or in most of the states, there is some subsidy on electricity. We shall come to that. So, why is subsidy given? What's the benefit? First, you will tell me what's the benefit. Interest subvention is simply that you are supposed to pay me the bank interest of rupees at the rate 10%. This is normal interest that banks should have charged to you. The government is saying that since you are a person who is a needy person, I want to support you in getting an employment. So government will say that out of this 10%, 6% would be paid by government. You only need to pay 4%. 4% by the Vishwakarma or Vishwakarmi, whatever is they are named. Okay. So under that scheme, whoever is the beneficiary would pay 4%. The rest would be paid by the government. This rest is called interest subvention. That interest has been reduced to 4%. That's the name, logic of the name, interest subvention. Okay. Now, before coming to the criticism of the subsidy, please tell me what are the benefits? Just note it down. I have already discussed with you the benefits of subsidy. It may happen that you have to write on the both side of any question. So what are the benefits? Just tell me quickly. Acha, people are saying already have written the answer. Just write it down. I will write it down with you as well. First thing is it will make the good affordable. The second thing is it will increase the consumption. Third thing is it will reduce the poverty. Fourth thing is overall, ultimately, if subsidy is given to the agricultural inputs like fertilizer, etc., it will increase the production. And if the production is increased, it will lead to food security. Okay. You can also write, I mean, the reduction in poverty or increase in consumption is a kind of welfare for people. You can use this keyword welfare. So ultimately, it is the consumer which is mostly benefited by the subsidy. Yes, Akshay is saying that if we look outside the agriculture, ठीक है, it is also a kind of attracting investors, or if you only look at from the perspective of agriculture, see who is the investor in case of agriculture? The farmers. So ultimately it is making agriculture more remunerative. Making agriculture more remunerative. Remunerative means you are earning more now. Okay. The same thing can also be told as increasing farmers' income. ओवरऑल फार्मर इनकम को बढ़ाने का ये एक टूल है. ठीक है. So note it down all the good things that we have noted down because of which the subsidy was brought. So if someone says you that subsidy is wrong, I mean someone a lot many article will come in the newspaper time and again, then do measure that whether these benefits are more or cost is more. Not all subsidy is bad. Subsidies have certain benefits. There are certain good things about them as well. Okay, so what's wrong with subsidy? Then you tell me. You must have studied since you are already studying for a few months now. That's why rather than telling you straight away, I am asking you to give some input because you must have read in newspaper by now. High taxes, more expenditure. Probably what Devansu and Sneha are collectively saying that there shall be more expenditure because of the subsidy. And from where will government get the money for this expenditure? By bringing what more taxes, increased burden on the government. Okay. Punishment to the hard working people. Yes, few people say that it is the lazy people who are getting the subsidy and hard working people are punished by more taxes. Some people misuse by corruption, shortage of supply. Yes. So all the point that I have come, you have already told me. First and foremost is it will burden the government finances. Ultimately, government has to incur some cost, right? So this is the money which government has to bring from somewhere. In fact, from where will government bring about this money? So usually government resort to borrowing. So it increases the government borrowing also. Borrowing is simply that government take loan. So government can do two things. Either government can take borrowing or government can increase taxes. So these are also two negative consequences which are possible. That government's debt burden would increase. The government would have to increase taxes to pay more. The next thing is it distorts the market as well. So we have seen that demand supply curve. In this demand supply curve, there was this market price which was being achieved through the there was a balance between the demand and supply. Now what you have done is you have artificially, if you have given subsidy to some produce, you have reduced the cost. We have seen this demand supply curve, right? And in demand supply, if government is giving subsidy, the cost will come down. So market prices, the price will come down. And in this scenario, we have seen that there was this scenario of excess demand. So first, for whichever good subsidy is given, there shall be excess demand. We have seen it in case of demand supply curve. And then by using this good, obviously, if farmers are being given subsidy for diesel, for electricity, they will use this diesel and electricity to produce something. And this excess demand will also lead to overproduction and excess supply of further produce. So first there would be excess demand of input. This would be for input. And then there shall be excess supply of produce. Both of these are going to distort the market, because market equilibrium is going to be disturbed at both the places. And if you are already linked to the agriculture practices, if you have some background, you must have noticed that during Kharif season or during monsoon, when there is need of fertilizer, there is absence of fertilizer in the market. You do not get it in the market. Simran is nodding, so probably she has witnessed it. Why? Because there is excess demand. Why there is excess demand? Because prices have gone down artificially. Now more people are interested in buying urea. Everyone is thinking that we will put some urea in our field. Earlier, when LPG was subsidized, we used to witness the same thing. LPG के लिए लाइन लगी करती थी. हमारे शहर में people used to go right at in the morning at 4 a.m. and stand in the queue. 8 बजे से दुकान खुलेगी, उससे सिलेंडर बटेगा. But they were used to stand in the queue, and few people even did not get the cylinder. Then they have to go again next day. So that was the scenario of excess demand because of the subsidy. Now then, there would also be something called trade dispute. So what will happen, that because your cost of production is less, I mean, if you have given fertilizer at a cheaper rate, if you have given, say, diesel at a cheaper rate, electricity at a cheaper rate, the cost of production of those agriculture produce in your country is reduced. And apart from cost of production, there is a scenario of excess supply in your country of those wheat or rice and those things. So what you will do, you will simply come up with an idea. So why not sell this excess supply to some country in Africa or America or China? Then Africa and America and China will complain. Let's see, because you have given subsidy, that's why you have excess supply. So you are distorting the market. So what China, or they will start imposing tariff. They have to protect their farmer. Their farmer are also producing some food grains. But since your food grain is cheaper than their farmer, I mean, the people in China may start buying your food grain, or the people in America, because the grain from India is cheaper. This is the same thing that happens in case of electronics. We are buying Chinese-made electronics items. We are buying Chinese-made LED bulbs. Why? Because they are cheaper. So the people, or even in case of, say, walnuts, most of the walnuts that we consume in India are those which are imported from USA, California walnut. Why? Because their farmers are able to somehow produce it at a cheaper rate than the farmers in India. Even apple, there are a lot of apples in Delhi market which are imported apple. And people in India are buying those imported apple rather than buying the apple from Kashmir or Simla, because they are somehow cheaper than that. So what consumer looks is price. And if these agriculture produces are cheaper, and it is cheaper because of the subsidy, not because the natural cost of production is less. Sometimes there is natural advantage with few countries. For example, the Eastern India will have a natural advantage in the production of rice because they have high rainfall. Okay, so they might produce more. So that's fair. But if artificially government is reducing the cost of production or doing something which is resulting in excess supply and price glut, then there would be trade dispute. Then there shall be some environmental impact as well. This is something that you have already studied in the last class also. You told me that, yes, WTO will come. So environmental impact, you have told me in the last class also. And you might have witnessed it if you belong to the region of Punjab or Haryana, that there the electricity is free. And if there is free electricity, people keep on using the groundwater. Okay, so groundwater depletion will happen. Then in India, people use a lot of urea. There is excess consumption of urea because of this subsidy. Whether their field requires urea or not, they will throw urea because it is cheap. So there shall be soil degradation. There is also something called algal bloom. Have you read it? Why does it happen? Yes. So there is also a case of water pollution or algal bloom and algal bloom because of algal bloom is primarily because of use of a lot of chemical fertilizer. These nutrients ultimately travel to the nearby water bodies, and when these water bodies have a lot of excess nutrient, the algae's growth happens in those water bodies, and it results in biodiversity loss. So in environmental impact itself, there are various points. One is the groundwater get depleted. Another is that water pollution happens. Then there is loss of biodiversity through algal bloom. Then there is soil degradation. Okay. One more problem which has come because of the subsidy, it is better to be written here only, is the issue of see monocropping as well. However, this is more an issue due to MSP, less due to input subsidy, but still somewhat it is related to subsidies as well. So we are shifting towards producing of those input intensive crop, or which are the crop which are not suitable to the agriculture. ठीक है? Rather monocropping के जगह पे आप लिख लो unsustainable agriculture. For example, farmers in Punjab started growing sugarcane. Why? Not because sugarcane is something which is a water intensive crop, but you have started growing water intensive crop even the regions which were water deficient, because you could extract groundwater using free electricity. So you are not looking for input, then you are only looking for those crops which would be sold costly after production. Input is irrelevant. Usually what you look for the sale value minus input cost. Ideally, this is something for a business proposition that you should look, but because of the subsidy, your input cost is negligible. Now you only look for sale value, and sale value would naturally be more for those crops which are not suitable for this region. It will always happen. Something which is suitable for this region would be available in abundance, and it would be cheaper. So you will start growing those crops which are not suitable for this region, and this again, this is simply unsustainable agriculture, and this creates various problems like drought, soil degradation. Again, environmental problems are there. For example, the big reason for drought few years ago in Marathwada region was the cultivation of sugar cane in those regions which did not have enough water. So farmers growing water deficient crop, sorry, water, what you say, intensive crop, water intensive crop in water deficient region. Two words are there. The crop is water intensive, it needs a lot of water, and the region is water deficient. Okay. First note it down, then I will move to the next point. If you note it down, then let me know. I will delete them. Then I will move to the next point. Noted? Next is that these subsidies mainly benefits the industry. See, now we are discussing only in terms of agriculture subsidy, okay? Not subsidy in general. Because this is what is there in our syllabus. So it mainly benefits the industry rather than the farmers. It is given in the name of farmers, but actually who is the recipient of these is the industries. For example, let's consider the fertilizer subsidy. So how fertilizer subsidy is given? It's like government fixes, we shall also discuss in detail the price, how fertilizer subsidy happens in the next slide. But practically what happens that government fixes a price. So your price is rupees 242 per 45 kg bag. This is typical price of urea in the market. But the company says that, sir, our cost of production is rupees 900 for this 45 kg bag. So the government says that the difference would be, I would pay you the difference, you sell in market at this price only. So effectively this around 658 rupees, this is being transferred to the company, not to the farmer. So it's the actual the amount, the money, the subsidy amount moves from the government to the industries, not the farmers. Okay, when we say look into the fertilizer subsidy in more detail, then a bit more clarity will come. For now, let's write it here only. Then the mostly benefits the prosperous farmers. See, if I am a small farmer, probably I will buy only one bag of urea and I will benefit say 650 rupees. But if I am a large farmer, if I have 10 times the field, then probably I will need 10 bags. Then the amount of subsidy which I will get is also 10 times. So it is the large farmer, the prosperous farmers which benefit more, and a small and marginal farmer benefits less. A small and marginal farmer also benefits less because of the black marketing, etc. See what will happen because of the excess demand. I mean, we have seen that since in the cost has reduced, there is excess demand. Excess demand would lead to a scarcity in the market. In case of a scarcity, it is the large farmer who are going to be who are going to access those fertilizer from the market, and a small farmer are not going to access them. Or even if they get to access, they will have to pay higher prices rather than the low prices. Then there is opportunity cost. We have studied it earlier. Have we? Can someone explain how is opportunity cost working here? Monocropping? Not exactly. सब्सिडी के टर्म्स में सोचो. Think in some terms of subsidy. Infra, yes, you are right. See, the amount which you are using in terms of providing subsidy could have been used in other places like building infrastructure, like doing some R&D. You could have come with some genetically modified crop or some hybrid crops which would have increased the production, or you could have come up with some novel agriculture practices which would have increased the productivity. But you are not spending in R&D or infrastructure, rather you are spending on subsidy. So there is huge opportunity cost, especially because there is a data that the money spent on road infrastructure is 10 times more effective in poverty reduction as compared to money spent on poverty alleviation. Write it down. The money spent on road is 10 times more efficient, is 10 times more efficient in poverty reduction, is 10 times more efficient in poverty reduction as compared to money spent on poverty alleviation schemes. How does road building lead to poverty reduction? Can anyone explain? And I am saying it is 10 times more efficiently reducing the poverty. But how? Employment. First, it will provide employment to those who will work during the construction of road. Okay. Then trade would increase. A lot many people would get connected to the nearby market, accessible market for the farmers as well as other agricultural laborers. So people can go to those areas. Then there would someone who will do this transportation. So a lot many employment would be created for perpetuity. In future also, a lot many people will run those transport services, and a lot many people can access the market. They can sell the produce at a higher price in the nearby market. They can get the more near input for agriculture. Earlier you were not connected to the market, you were not aware that when a new variety of seed is available, new variety of pesticide is available. So all these things clubbed together, this infrastructure is more effective, and that's why the present government is focusing a lot on infrastructure. Okay. However, when it comes to subsidy, I will give you a data. The fertilizer subsidy bill, चलो पहले यहां से शुरू करते हैं. The expenditure on R&D is approximately 10,000 crore. Can you tell me the approximate expenditure on fertilizer subsidy? Any idea? If this is 10,000 crore, what should be the fertilizer subsidy? Someone has Googled it probably. So in this year budget, it has reduced. Last year, it was approximately 2.25 lakh crore. This year, it has reduced to 1.75 lakh crore. This year, it means the estimate in this year budget. This is the extent of only one kind of subsidy, that is fertilizer subsidy. Then there is food subsidy, which is also approximately range into 1.5 lakh crore. as compared to something which is more effective, more efficient, gets such a low allocation of budget because you are already spending so much money in the subsidy. So you do not have enough money left for R&D or agriculture infrastructure. You can see that only around 46%, someone who will teach you irrigation will teach you in more detail with accurate data. Approximately 46% of total area is irrigated in India. So there is need to build irrigation infrastructure for more than half of the agriculture field. But we are not building that irrigation infrastructure, and rather we are spending on subsidy. That's the biggest criticism that subsidy is facing. So this is, although written at the end, this is probably the biggest criticism and the most valid one as well, which is given against subsidies. That you are not spending on infrastructure, rather you are spending on subsidy. Now the Satyajit is asking, sir, why does government spend more on subsidy than R&D? Well, it's simply the demerit of democracy. Have you studied that in polity? We are in democracy and our political executive have to win elections as well. So if I go to a village and say that, see, we are doing some research in our university, agriculture university, and we have spent 1 lakh crore rupees over there, and maybe in future, a few years down the line, you will have a new variety of say seed which will increase your income. Will you give me vote? Or if I give you 1,000 rupees directly, you will give me vote? I mean, on the eve of election, people get note, cash, and liquor and whatnot for the vote, and people give vote immediately. So cash is something which people which make people enthusiastic immediately in the short term. So that's why subsidies are like, people feel it immediately and people prefer it in democracy. Like as soon as the diesel prices crosses 110, 120, people start making hue and cry. There is a lot of inflation. Diesel itna ho gaya, Congress ke time pe itna tha, and so on. But why? Because it fills on your pocket immediately. Whereas in case of R&D, it will take time. There is high gestation period. There is a word, write it only in footnote, not directly. There is gestation period. It means that when you do the investment and when the investment starts giving you income, there is a time gap. That time gap is called gestation period. In case of R&D, this gestation period is high, but politicians have to win election every 5 years. That's why they go for something which gives the quick return, and that is subsidy. Okay. Now we shall study in some more detail the special case of fertilizer subsidy. This is something on which a few questions have also been asked in the past, and because last year the fertilizer subsidy bill has also ballooned like anything. As I have told you, that last year in 2022-23, the fertilizer subsidy was 2.25 lakh crore. In 2023-4, the government is estimating that it would have to spend a little less, 1.75 lakh crore on fertilizer subsidy. So see, there are three prominent fertilizers that are used in India. Okay. One is urea. Second is potash. Which is also known as DAP. And third is phosphate. This is nitrogenous This is potassium. This is phosphorus. They are, this is in the short form K, phosphorus P, and this is N. So collectively they are called NPK. Okay, so these are the three major kind of uh, fertilizer that are required in agriculture. अच्छा, DAP is phosphorus, murium of potash. Okay, ठीक है, ये उल्टा हो गया है, ये ऐसे कर लो. So what government used to do is that government, like traditionally in case of diesel and petrol also, government used to fix the prices, and the difference is paid to companies as subsidy. Now what happens that in case of urea specifically, the input is, I mean, if I am a factory which is producing urea, input is natural gas. You require natural gas to produce urea. Okay. Now, in case this, you must be knowing that natural gas is something which India does not produce much. Okay. So, India has to import this natural gas for production of urea. And that's why in case of urea or any of these fertilizer, we are not self-sufficient. So, we also import natural gas, as well as these quantities are also imported. Then what happens? The next thing is, since urea has nitrogen in it, okay, so there are a lot many industries which also require nitrogen, which are based on ammonia, ammonium, etc. So these industries, what they can also do, that they can also use urea, since urea is being subsidized, as their raw material. So rather than using natural gas or ammonia, ammonium, etc., they can use this subsidized urea as their input. But government wants to give subsidy only to the farmers. So that's why government controls the whole supply chain. So controls, or you can say that government monitors the whole supply chain of the import of these fertilizer, especially urea. Okay, when I say that government monitors or controls the whole supply chain, it would include means it would means there would be few people only who can import the urea. So there is someone who will get the license for importing urea. There is also someone will get the license for production of urea. So only those people can import urea who have got this license. There only those companies can produce the urea which has got the license for production of urea. So there is limited number of producer and importer who can import urea. Then what government does is government allocates the fertilizer to different state. So it's not that, I mean, it would be imported on Gujarat coast, so it will not happen that all the urea would be first sold to Gujarat. Like Bihar needs more or Jharkhand needs more, so it would be evenly distributed. And one of the major criteria is cropping area. How much is the area which is under crop cultivation? Based on the cropping area, but there are other criteria as well. How much is domestic production? How much is the last year demand? So based on these criteria, government decides that which state will get how much of fertilizer. Okay. And then government gives subsidy to the company, and the subsidy is difference between the cost of delivery at farm gate and the market price set by government. So the market price which is set by the government, or you can write the selling price, and cost of delivery at farm gate. This difference is being paid by government to either the producer or the importer. Okay, because production is also happening. Here there is one more challenge. Now one company can say that, see, since I am importing say natural gas from Iran, my cost of production is less. Some other company can say that I am importing natural gas from Russia, my is even lesser. And some can say that I had imported natural gas from America, my natural gas is costly, so my cost of production is more. But the government is saying that everyone would sell at same prices. So what government says that you calculate your cost of production and I will pay you the difference irrespective of your cost of production. Okay? Have you understood it? So note it down as well. The government simply says that irrespective of the cost of production, the difference would be paid to the company. So the amount of subsidy is different for different companies. If my cost of production is 900 rupees for one bag of urea, I will get 900 minus 242. If someone is 800 minus 242, 800, he will get 800 minus 242. If someone's cost of production is 1000, he will also get 1000 minus 242. So different companies get different amount of subsidy. Okay, because their cost of production may vary. It can also happen that, see, there is one company which is settled in Gujarat, so it will probably provide cheaper urea to the people of Gujarat, but it may not be producing sufficient amount of urea in Gujarat. So some other company which is producing in say Haryana, it will also sell in Gujarat, but its cost of production would be more because it would also have to incur a transportation cost. So different company will have different cost and government will pay them different amount of subsidy. Now here is the problem. The problem is that if I am a company and I am assured that whatever be my cost of production, government is going to pay me. Okay, and this cost of production obviously includes some amount of subsidy, some amount of profit as well. So probably in a way I am assured of profit. Then say, will I do any investment in reducing cost of production? Like modernizing my factory, modernizing my industry, which normally companies do. See, I mean, earlier there was only Horlicks. So what Horlicks was doing? Horlicks was selling its Horlicks at a premium rate in that glass bottle. But then competition came, Complan and Boost and so many other health drink came. Now it has to reduce cost of production, so it innovated. It has started coming into that refill pack and then plastic bottles. Okay, so such kind of innovation keep on happening because of the competition. But if I am assured that I will get, say, 10% or 50%, whatever is decided by the government profit, why would I do the investment? Why would I not use this profit in my other factory? Say I will open a new factory for production of something else with the same money rather than investing. So these fertilizer companies stopped investing in modernization. Write it down. Since they were assured of a profit by the government, they stopped modernizing their factory. Since fertilizer company were assured of profit, they stopped modernizing their industries. In turn, they become inefficient. In turn, they become inefficient. Since fertilizer companies were assured of profit, they stopped modernizing their factories, and in turn they become inefficient. और इसका नुकसान किसको भरना पड़ेगा? गवर्नमेंट को, अल्टीमेटली टैक्स पेयर्स को. ठीक है, ओवरऑल लॉस किसका है? इकोनॉमी का. अगर आपके इकोनॉमी में कुछ चीजें इनएफिशिएंट है तो आपकी कंट्री का लॉस है, इकोनॉमी का लॉस हो रहा है. ठीक है. एंड देन दिस आइडिया कि हम इसको कंट्रोल करके, बाय कंट्रोलिंग द सप्लाई चेन, आई विल अवॉइड द पिल्फरेज और अवॉइड द लीकेज of fertilizer to other sector is an utopian idea in a corrupt country like India. So this also failed, and there was always a leakage to other industries. तो ये भी लिखो. ठीक है, इफेक्टिवली हम जो लास्ट 2 पॉइंट लिख रहे हैं कि हम प्रॉब्लम क्या है फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडी में, वो हम लिख रहे हैं. ठीक है. सो देयर वाज आल्सो लीकेज ऑफ फर्टिलाइजर टू, or other subsidized fertilizer to other industries. Now the Akhil is saying, why can't government buy from cheap producer? Because government has already limited the production. Government makes an estimate that how much fertilizer is needed, and government has already given production licenses to only those many companies. So if government stop buying from someone, there would be a scarcity of fertilizer in the country. That would be the first problem, and then it would be wrong with these companies. You cannot do that you will buy from someone and you will buy not from someone else. If all these companies are producing, you will have to have a common policy for these companies. Okay. So now the second problem was there was always a leakage of subsidized fertilizer to other sector. So then government has recent time come up with some solution. So some reform in fertilizer subsidy has come. So give a heading, recent reform in fertilizer sector. The first is neem coated urea. You must have heard about it. So what government did is urea will be coated with neem. Somewhere they also write it NEAM. Both are correct. Don't bother about them. If they coat the urea granules, you might have seen urea. Has someone? So it is basically a solid, a small granules, crystals. Okay. So if you coat these granules with neem, effectively the first benefit, it becomes useless for other industries. And in fact, it was happening in such a way, to such an extent, that even these subsidized fertilizer were exported to our neighboring country like Pakistan and Bangladesh, because it was costly in Bangladesh. So what people were doing, some traders were doing, they were illegally smuggling urea to the neighboring countries. Okay, so first what happened, that it became useless for other industries when you do the neem coating. So the leakage to other industry has stopped because of this. The second thing that has happened, that it increased the absorption of urea by plant. So the crop, ultimately when you spray the fertilizer, it first mixes into the soil or the water, and then the water is absorbed by the roots of the soil. So through which only few percentage of urea goes into the plant. So that percentage increased. We do not have to go into that much of detail, how much is absorbed earlier, how much is absorbed more now. We have to only study that the absorption increased in the plant. Because of this, obviously, the productivity will increase. So this was a reform which saved government money, at the same time benefited the farmers as well. So good reform, successful one. The second reform is nutrient-based subsidy. Government said that rather than paying you the difference between your cost of production and the market price, I would rather pay you on the basis of the nutrient that you are using. See, one more thing that has happened when where you have written that the factory just stopped modernizing. Here that write one more point, that the companies stopped innovating as well. Like, see, there can be various different combination ना, जैसे आप लोगों ने ऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री पढ़ी होगी. सी एक ऐसा भी समथिंग बन सकता है, एक ऐसा भी बन सकता है, एक ऐसा भी बन सकता है, एक ऐसा भी बन सकता है, एक हो सकता है जिसमें फास्फोरस और नाइट्रोजन दोनों हो, एक में दो दो नाइट्रोजन, वन फास्फोरस. देयर कुड बी वेरियस डिफरेंट कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ कंपाउंड which could be manufactured, that can have different efficiency in providing these nutrients. Ultimately, we want nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to be delivered to the plants. So the companies could have innovated. So this innovation was not required by the company. So they were not innovating. So in this scheme, what they did, the government said that the subsidy would be paid in proportion to the amount of nutrient in the fertilizer. Write it down. The subsidy would be paid in proportion to the amount of nutrient in proportion to the amount of nutrient present in the fertilizer. And the government said something like that, for per kg of phosphorus, per kg of phosphorus, your subsidy would be something like rupees 90 per rupees 90. या rupees x लिख लो, ठीक है, because this x can keep on changing. For per kg of potassium, there would be say rupees by that you will get, ठीक है. So it doesn't matter how long chain you have. There is a possibility that someone is able to manufacture a compound which has a lot of carbon in it, and the useful nitrogen is present only in very relatively less amount. So government will say that it doesn't matter to us, or rather farmers also. If you are having a compound which does not have enough nitrogen, you will get less of subsidy. If it does not have, what matters is only nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, so based on these three compounds, whatever is the amount of these compound is present in your fertilizer, this is the subsidy that I am going to provide. So now it incentivizes companies to innovate in their produce. ठीक है? So write benefits. एक चीज और लिख लो यहाँ पे बिफोर राइटिंग टू द बेनिफिट्स. ठीक है? One more point is, now the companies were free to determine their own prices. The companies were free to set their own price. तो गवर्नमेंट ने अपना कंट्रीब्यूशन फिक्स कर लिया, लाइक से वी विल गिव यू 500 रुपीज पर से 45 केजी बैग, और लाइक पर केजी ऑफ पोटास or phosphorus, and then it would be left for the companies that you produce it at a cheaper rate and you enjoy more. For example, say if a company is producing fertilizer at rupees 400 per kg, government is also giving it say 300 subsidy, so its cost of production would be rupees 100 only. In market, if it is able to charge rupees 250, its profit would be rupees 150. Some other company which is not efficient is producing at rupees 500. Government is giving 300. Government has fixed its contribution. Then his profit would be only rupees 50. So the companies now have an incentive to innovate in product to reduce their cost of production. So benefit में लिखो. Benefit, the companies now have incentive to innovate in product. Product innovation भी होगा and modernize their factories. The companies now had incentive to innovate their product and modernize their factories. ठीक है? The farmer can also benefit from better product. If some companies are innovative and coming up with better solution, ठीक है, the farmer can also benefit from better product or better fertilizer. Okay. There would be competition among companies. There would be competition among companies. ठीक है, कंपनीज को गवर्नमेंट पूरी तरीके से फ्री कर दिया, आप अपना प्रोडक्ट बनाओ, अपने प्राइस सेट करो, तो कंपनीज भी खुश, फार्मर भी खुश. इट वाज ए काइंड ऑफ विन विन सिचुएशन फॉर एवरीवन. ठीक है, बट यहाँ पे दो प्रॉब्लम आ गई. पहला प्रॉब्लम ये आया कि लोगों ने, people started opposing it. A lot of farmers lobby said that this is something which is not workable. It will increase the prices of fertilizer. So because of the pressure of farmer lobby, this scheme was not implemented for urea. ठीक है. So लिखो problem करके लिखो. Problem in this scheme. So because of the pressure from farmers group, because of the pressure from farmers group, the scheme was not implemented for urea. Because of the pressure from farmer group, the scheme was not implemented for urea. ठीक है. And government became a bit greedy as well. ठीक है. ये भी लिखना नहीं है. ठीक है. Let me explain it first. How the government became greedy? Government said that, see, for example, if today you calculate based, you do some calculation and you decide that today we are paying per kg of phosphorus rupees 100 and per kg of potassium rupees 150. And if you fix this 100 and 150 forever, that my part is done. I will give you rupees 100 and 150. That's it. Now you do whatever you want to do. Tomorrow it may happen that the input cost is increasing, the prices may go up. It may happen that input cost can decrease, the prices can go down. Usually governments are very active when prices go down in reducing the subsidy, but the government does not increase the subsidy when prices went up. So when the government did not increase the subsidy when prices went up, effectively the prices of potash and phosphate become very high in the market. ठीक है. Write it down. That the government did not increase the subsidy amount when the prices of fertilizers went up. Which fertilizer went up? Phosphate and potash. Because for urea, there was no such a scheme. So in this scheme, the government should have increased its contribution. But the government said that, see, I already told you that this much the input subsidy I will give you. So government did not increase it. Effectively, what happened that in the market, the prices of these fertilizer increased. What will farmer do now? If I am a farmer, I am getting urea at a fixed price, say rupees 250, and for potash, earlier it may be 400 or 500. Now the potash has become 800. I would naturally shift to urea. Most of the farmers are not very literate. What's the benefit of potash and what's the benefit of urea? They see that all are fertilizer. So whatever is cheaper, use it. So the use of urea increased disproportionately in India. So as a result of this scheme, the use of urea increased disproportionately in India. Write it down. The use of urea increased disproportionately in India. Normally, it is said, halanki it is not to be fixed for the whole country, but on an average, it is said that the ratio should be 4:2:1. Normally, the ratio of use of N is to P is to K should be 4:2:1. I have not checked the latest data, but few years ago, Economic Survey has reported that in this, the nitrogen has gone somewhere above 8. Okay, I will update it into the next class. But few years ago, the economic survey has reported that 4:2:1 has gone to somewhere above 8 for nitrogen as best fertilizer. And a lot of contribution is of this scheme, because this scheme made urea more affordable as compared to other fertilizer. So people shifted to more of urea. Again, this will lead to other environmental problems. This will lead to reduction in productivity as well. I mean, if your crop does not need urea, you are giving urea, it will not increase production. At the same time, if useless urea is provided into the field, it will destroy the productivity of the soil fertility of your field as well. The excess urea will go to the nearby pond or water bodies, and it will create the algal bloom. So all those problems will get exaggerated. So सब कुछ problem बढ़ जाएगा. So this scheme should have two changes. One, it should include urea also. And the second, this government contribution should be dynamic. ठीक है, तो suggestions में लिखो suggestions. First, it should include nitrogen also. Include nitrogen also. Second, the government contribution should be dynamic. Dynamic means you should change when the circumstances change. So this is one reform. It was introduced in 2010. Nutrient-based subsidy scheme was introduced in 2010. At that point of time, it was said that few years down the line, we shall introduce or we shall extend it to nitrogen also. But that few years never came. We are already in the 13th years of its implementation. Yeah. So Akhil is saying that it is now 8:3:1. So we can trust Akhil for the time being and write it 8:3:1. Okay. So that few year is not coming, and since upcoming year election year, it is not going to come in the near future as well. But this scheme is not a success. This scheme is a very good scheme. It has very good idea, but it has failed because you have not extended it to nitrogen. Because you have not increased your contribution dynamically. Okay. So this is a reform which was well intended, but not implemented in a true spirit. And that's why it has failed. First point is it should be extended to nitrogen, because currently this scheme does not cover nitrogenous fertilizer. And the second point is the government's contribution of the subsidy should be dynamic. Because see, why the last year fertilizer subsidy has increased? Because earlier it used to be somewhere in the range of 70,000 crore only. I have written somewhere, no? Yeah, fertilizer bill I have written that last year it has become 2.25 lakh crore. Earlier it used to be in the range of 70,000 crore only. So there has been disproportionate increase because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So because of the Russia-Ukraine war, we were importing a lot of urea from Ukraine, and that has become costly because of the global supply chain disruption. That's why this bill has also increased. So this can happen at any time with any of the fertilizer. So the government must, like, since urea is not a part, so government has bear the burden. It has not been transferred to the farmers. For farmers, the cost remained constant. All the excess cost has been borne by the government. So government is anyway doing this. So why not bring it under the nutrient based subsidy regime and then do the same thing, then bear the burden, monitor the cost in the market. Okay. Now one more last point that you should write is, since I have written it here, the government controls the whole supply chain. Which department of the government does this? Anyone have idea? There is this department right in the side note only. There is this Department of Fertilizer. There is a specific Department of Fertilizer. It is not DOF. Okay. So this department does this. Interesting thing is not that Department of Fertilizer does this. Interesting thing is the ministry in which this department lies. Does anyone know? Ministry of Home. नहीं ये थोड़ा ज्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग हो गया. Normal common sense suggests that it should be Ministry of Agriculture, but actually it is Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer. There is a ministry with the name Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer. So any ministry or any department whose scheme you cannot correlate with its name, like fertilizer in Ministry of Chemical, that has a relatively high chances of getting asked in the exam. Okay, so that's all that we had for fertilizer subsidy. Let's move to, in general, the discussion on subsidy that we were happening. What should be the way forward for the subsidies? So subsidies should be targeted. The biggest problem was that it is getting leaked to other industries, and also it is benefiting more to the larger farmer. So we should target the subsidies. Okay. So in this, there could be an idea of direct benefit transfer. So rather than paying it to the industries, why not pay it to the farmer? So suppose a farmer has bought 10 kg of urea. So the whatever subsidy you want to give to the company, give it to that farmer's account. So the diversion to the industry will never take place. It will only benefit. And then you can have a cap as well. In case of like LPG cylinder, you have a cap of 12 cylinders. So in case of this DBT also, you can have a cap that maximum subsidy that a farmer will get is rupees 10,000. So naturally, a small farmer will benefit, and as a farmer become a large farmer, he will stop getting the extra subsidy. So in DBT, you can have a capping as well. Obviously, हमारे देश के लोग बहुत तेजस्वी हैं और उसका भी कुछ ना कुछ लूप होल निकाल लेंगे. ठीक है, but for the time being, you can give this idea. Then we should incentivize some environmentally sustainable practices, like use of green manure, organic farming. We could incentivize those things as well, apart from incentivizing those environmentally degradable practices. Again, we should have a plan for gradual phasing out of subsidies. We should make it clear that the subsidies are not going to be there forever. Especially those subsidies which starts giving negative impact, they should be gradually phased out. You should not, or rather never, write that we should ban subsidy, we should stop subsidy. You should only write the gradually phase out subsidies which are having side effects, which are having negative externalities. There is a word called externalities. Externalities means similarly side effect. That external outcome which is not desirable. तो ऐसा डिजायरेबल अनडिजायरेबल किसी आउटकम निकल रहा है, उन सब्सिडीज को बस धीरे धीरे करके फेज आउट करो. ठीक है, कुछ सब्सिडीज को कंटिन्यू करने दो, और उनको जो कंटिन्यू करो आप टारगेटेड फॉर्म में करो, डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर करो. ठीक है. and those incentivize those practices which are environmentally sustainable. And then you have to find other ways to increase farmers' income. It is negative. Externalities means external impact. Okay, what was not an intended consequence. For example, when you buy a car to drive on Delhi, you do not intend to pollute the Delhi's environment. So, but unintentionally, you end up polluting the environment. So that is a negative externality which was not intended. So subsidy was never intended to pollute the soil or the groundwater. But this is something which is happening. So there is negative externalities. So that's all that we are studying for the time being in case of agriculture. There are a few other topics like MSP, marketing reforms. So those are the things which are related to marketing. Those things we shall be studying when we shall be studying the marketing related reforms. We shall come back to agriculture again. Nano area, I have skipped because it is something which should be ideally covered by the science and technology teacher. This is more an aspect of science and technology, less an aspect of economics. Okay. More importantly, I am not a geography teacher. Okay. We are teaching agriculture as a part of economy. So that's why we were intended to cover that chapter where it is written the subsidies provided in agriculture. Okay. Nano urea is an innovation. It's a scientific innovation. Okay. So probably it would be covered by the SNT teacher. Okay. When they shall be covering nanotechnology, as a part of that nanotechnology, they will be covering nano urea as well. Okay. So market related reforms we shall be covering. Then we shall come back again to agriculture and then cover MSP and those things. Now we shall move ahead to industrial development in between 1950 to 1990. Remember, our chapter is the economic growth from 1950 to 1990. So in that, we have already traced the economic growth in agriculture sector. We shall now be tracing economic growth in industrial sector. So see, you have already studied or you might have studied, there is something called Mahalanobis plan, PC Mahalanobis. So we have already studied that there was planning commission which was planning and doing all those things. And see, first 5-year plan had a focus area on agriculture. Then in second 5-year plan, the focus area shifted to industries. And in second 5-year plan, whatever roadmap was planned through a industrial revolution 1956, although it came in 1956, it was prominently implemented in second 5-year plan, but the same policy remained effective till the time LPG reforms came in 1992. Okay, so whatever we study in this industrial policy resolution, the same idea remained there in India's economic development in subsequent plans as well. So what was this industrial policy resolution? Let's see this. So this formed basis for second 5-year plan, but this is not to say that only second 5-year plan implemented this. It was implemented in all the subsequent plan till LPG reforms. Okay. Now what it did, it classified industries into three categories. One, it said that there would be some industries which would be exclusively owned by the government. There would be few where both government and private sector would be there. And there would be few which would be exclusively in the private sector. Well, doesn't it seem like seventh schedule? There would be some chapter on which only union government will make laws. There would be some on which both union and state will make laws. And there would be some on which only a state will make laws. So the same ideology is perpetuating everywhere. See, this is how we are implementing mixed economy. When we are saying that there will be certain thing which will be exclusively by the government, this is socialism. When we are saying that there would be something which would be in private sector, this is capitalism. ये लिखना नहीं है, सिर्फ समझ लो आप, ठीक है? When you are saying something on which both this sector is under the mixed economy. Overall, our economy is becoming mixed, where both capitalism and socialism is at play. Okay, now write few examples of these sectors as well. For example, railway, iron and steel, petroleum, atomic energy. So these were the sectors which were reserved exclusively for the government. You might have seen that these are the sector in which big PSUs are present. Still the bigger companies which railway तो अभी भी government के ही पास है. There is no such private company in railway operation. In iron and steel, the biggest company in India is SAIL. Rest of other steel companies are still smaller. In case of petroleum, it is Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, which is dominating this sector. So these are the sector. Why the government PSUs are dominating? Because earlier they were only allowed to be run by the government companies. Okay. Then the sectors where both could have done is like machine tools. Non-ferrous metals. मतलब आयरन के अलावा जो मेटल्स होते हैं, एल्यूमिनियम एटसेट्रा, एल्यूमिनियम, कॉपर एटसेट्रा. फर्टिलाइजर एटसेट्रा. Exclusively private sector, these were the consumer goods. So usually consumer goods were left exclusively for the private sector. Like if you have to you make an industry for the toy making, for the plastic items, for kitchen utensils. Okay, so iron and steel will be made in the government factory, then the government factory will give it to the some private company that will make the katora and thali, which will come to the your home. This is how the government envisage the development will happen. Then what is said? Have you written it down? Next, government said that license would be required to open new industry or if an existing industry has to expand. So if you have a factory for the production of say 1000 toys, even in case of those industries which were left for the private sector. So this license requirement was for private sector. So if you have a factory which produces 1000 toys per year and you want to increase your capacity to 2000 toys, then you will have to get a license from the government. If you want a new factory, then also you will have to get a license from the government, which was later on known as license Raj. ठीक है, अभी नहीं लिखना है license Raj. When we will write the criticism, then we will write license Raj. अभी तो बस क्या है यही लिख रहे हैं. Why was it done? So earlier when we had made that सांप and सीढ़ी बनाया था ना हम लोगों ने, a stair, how planning was happening, right? There was a point that we have to channelize the resources. there was a point that government was allocating resources to different sectors. So how was government controlling that allocation of resources? Through this licenses. Suppose government has decided that the economy needs 1,000 metric ton of iron and steel, and it needs 500 metric ton of aluminium. Then it needs 250 metric ton of copper. So it would give licenses to the companies only till this target is achieved in a financial year. If there are already enough companies which are producing 250 metric ton of copper, the government will no longer give license for any company to establish a copper plant. It would say that now the economy's need is fulfilled. The economy now needs investment in aluminium factory. So if you have extra money, invest in aluminium factory. When aluminium quota is also full, it will say that now the economy needs more investment in iron. So invest in iron. I will not give you license for aluminium because economy need is fulfilled. So this is how plan was implemented. If government does not do this, if government do not have this licensing, people will probably it is possible that private sector or those people who have money, they will invest in only one sector and they might leave other sector untouched. This is quite a possibility. It happens in the market quite a number of times. For example, COVID came and there was no company which was producing masks in India. We were importing masks. So the government was planning what is needed in the economy and accordingly licenses was being given. Then there was another purpose as well, that government wanted to save the small industries from big industries. It often happens that जैसे एक हिंदी में कहावत है, बड़ी मछली छोटे मछली को खा जाती है. So the big companies cannot, small companies cannot withstand the competition from large companies. So government wanted to save these small industries. So to save these industries, government kept a check on the size of bigger industries. You should not grow too much big. I mean, for example, you can look at the Reliance in the retail business. It has bought the a Smart Bazaar, Big Bazaar, all of them. Now you have no choices left. You have to buy from a Smart Bazaar only at the price that they will set. Okay, so such scenario government did not want to create. For this, there was an act named MRTP Act. Okay. Full form of MRTP is monopolitive. Mhm. Monopoly Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. So this was the act which the government has enacted to restrict from companies to expand. कि कोई company monopoly ना बना ले. ठीक है? We have already seen in the market that monopoly is not good for the consumer. So to ensure that the market remain in the interest of consumer, the government has brought this MRTP Act. Then a small scale industries, for small scale industries, government was doing some other things as well. It has it has reserved number of sectors which would be exclusively reserved for the small scale industries. For example, agarbatti making. So a lot many sectors were reserved in which bigger companies, bigger industries will not venture into. Why it was done? Because the government, one of the objective was to create employment as well. We had to reduce poverty, and for reduction of poverty, we had to create employment. And employ these small scale industries are very labor intensive. So to create employment, government planned that few sectors would be left for the small industries only. And obviously, if a company starts making agarbatti using its machinery, then these small companies would not be able to compete with them. So to safeguard these small industries, government said that few sectors would be reserved for small industries. And then these companies also got incentive in tax, loan, etc. Next aspect was related to trade policy. In case of trade policy, the purpose of the government was, see, I will be back in a minute, just wait. अभी क्लास ओवर नहीं हुई है, 1 मिनट में. Okay, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, so in case of trade policy, the government trade policy was that of import substitution. See, one of the goals of planning was that we have to become self-sustainable. So in case of self-sustainable, what we have to do is we have to substitute the import. Whatever things we are importing, we should do domestic production. So one thing was that our domestic production was focused at substituting the import. We were making those industries where we were heavily dependent on import. Okay, this strategy was also known as inward looking strategy. What is the meaning of inward looking strategy? It's like we were looking only at domestic factors, what we were producing, what is needed in India. We were not looking outside. For example, China is producing those diyas and these LED small lights not to be used in China, rather to be used in India during Diwali. So their strategy is outward looking. They are looking what is needed in India, what is needed in maybe Africa, what is needed in America, and they are producing those things. What we were not looking outside. We were only looking at domestic sector, what is needed in India, and accordingly we were producing. Okay. Accordingly, even our trade was there to substitute import only. So what we were doing is we were having high import duty. Something is written here as well. We were having high tariffs and quotas. Now, tariffs simply means import duty and export duty. Okay, tariff means rate. So the rate of taxation on import and export, or rather rate of taxation on trade, was very high. Okay. Quota means when you fix limit on the quantity of import and export. Write it down. Quota means when a limit is fixed on quantity of import and export. Like, have you seen this 1992, a scam 1992 movie, web series? There is that car which he talks about. Which car that he wanted to buy? Lexus. Yes. So he said that I want to buy Lexus, and he said ki you can get it only after say 3 months or so, because the only one item is important and that item has already been booked by some other person. So even if you have money, since the quota is exhausted at that point of time, quota was there. This much amount of car can only be imported. So if the quota is exhausted, you cannot get the car, you cannot import it, even if you have money. Okay, so government was fixing how much quantity of certain item is needed. For example, like people can spend a lot of money on jewelry. Government is saying there is no worth of using this. So government can fix a quota that we will only import, say, 1 ton of gold. That's it. So even if you have money, you cannot import more gold now. There is no use of gold for the economy apart from this, so there is limit. So similarly, or overall, the purpose was that we wanted to reduce import, so we were having quota on import. Okay. What was the idea behind this? Idea was that we have to protect our industry. That's why this policy was called protectionist policy. So it was aimed, write it down, it was aimed at protecting the domestic industry. It was aimed at protecting the domestic industry. Why was there a need to protect the industry? Because of the argument that our industries were infant. So जब कोई बच्चा होता है तो बच्चे को आपको प्रोटेक्ट करना होता है, ठीक है? Or rather, if I give you an example from Kusti, in Kusti there is a weight category. The 50 kg guy is not allowed to fight with a 70 kg or 90 kg guy. So our industry was about that 50 kg guy. And if it starts competing with the industries of America and Europe, who were already developing, who were witnessing industrial revolution for say 2 centuries, 3 centuries, our industry would not be able to compete. And then the whole of India would keep on consuming the imported items only. And we have to develop the self-reliance. So we need to protect the infant industry. And this is something which has been done by all the countries. This is not something bad. Even in case of America, you must have studied in world history that when America developed, it was not known to the world how it was developing. So America was also keeping itself a closed economy in 20th century. No, not 20th, in 19th century. By the end of the 19th century, 1850 onwards, America's economy was also a closed economy. It developed rapidly, and after it developed, then it entered into the First World War, and then it made the dhamal. So the same was done by England also. When Britishers came to India, you must have studied, they applied high tariff on Indian export. So that their cotton industries back in Manchester grows. And once their industry grows, then they started exporting those items. So this was something which was done by all the countries, and the same was done by India also. That since our industry is infant, it needs protection. So we adopted protectionist policy. We discouraged import. How? Through tariffs and quotas. This is 1950. अभी दानिश, this is 1956. अभी WTO का जन्म नहीं हुआ है. WTO is yet to take birth. So there is no issue of WTO. Now, we had no focus on export. Our trade policy was only inward looking, no focus on export. Another reason why we had this tariff quota and inward looking strategy is that we had limited foreign exchange and we did not want to waste that foreign exchange on luxury items. Okay, so write it down also. Okay. Another reason is, another rationale is we did not want to waste the limited foreign exchange. We did not want to waste the limited foreign exchange on import of luxury goods. Foreign exchange means dollar. So you need dollar to import anything from outside. So limited amount of dollar was available in the country. We did not want that this dollar should be spent on importing Lexus. So we put quota and tariff to discourage import. Only essential item would be imported. Okay, so we did not want to spend the limited foreign exchange. Foreign exchange जिसको कि शॉर्ट में फॉरेक्स भी बोला जाता है. So we did not want to spend the limited foreign exchange on import of luxury goods. So we were rationalizing what to import, what not to import. We were rationalizing what to produce, what not to produce. So everything was controlled through a planned economy. This is centralized planning, and this was done by the central government from the top. Now probably you must have got the feel how planned economy was working. Have you got the feel? Okay. Then in the next class, we shall discuss how it was not working. Okay. It did not give the intended output, and that we shall discuss in the next class. Okay. And tomorrow, do solve the questions. Okay. In these areas, whatever we have discussed, fertilizer, subsidy, etc., time and again questions do come. So when tomorrow morning we give the questions, do solve them, and if you have doubt, we can discuss it in the class as well. Okay. If you have any doubt left, you may ask now as well, or we can disperse. And all the best for the semi-final. Hope we are not infected by dust disease again. Or other New Zealanders are very much dependent on their opener Rachin, Ravindra and Williamson. So they are probably infected by dust disease this time. Okay. So chalo, all the best. Take care. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.